please. Hello everybody, I am back today to tell you about all the best books that I read in 2020. This actually turned out to be a top 10 by accident. I didn't rate that many books 5 stars this year. I read lots of really great books, but there weren't that many that got to 5-star level for me. All these are new long-term favourites. However, I'm not going to rank them because I hate choosing between things. I love all of these, some more than others, but I cannot put them in an order, so I'm gonna go in the order that I read them. Also, these books are not exclusively books that were published in 2020. Most of them weren't published in 2020. They are just books that I read last year and loved. The light is doing something really dramatic right now, so I'm sorry. It's blinding me. My first favourite of the year is The Hero of Ages by Brandon Sanderson. I mentioned this in my Love Actually tag video as the book that I read this year with the best twist, because the twist at the end of this book, well, there are lots of twists. There are so many twists in this book. Yeah, everything about this just blew my tiny mind. This is the third and last book in the first Mistborn trilogy by Brandon Sanderson. I read the first 2 in the series last year, well, in 2019, so last year, on my boyfriend's recommendation, because they're his favourite books and I love them both. And then at the beginning of this year I finished the series. So I can't talk about the plot that much because it is the end of a trilogy, but the first book in the trilogy is called The Final Empire, and it's basically set in a world where everyone is split into nobles and a group of people who are the kind of vast majority called Scar, who are basically slaves. It's essentially about a small group of rebels planning to overthrow the kind of all-powerful government and leader. I love this series because it is so compelling and tense, and there's so much wonderful high fantasy magic stuff going on, but also the character development is incredible. There are so many amazing characters with such incredible arcs and lots of really fascinating beautiful relationships in it as well. I love the magic system as well. It's very kind of science-based almost. It feels like a science and it's quite complicated, but there's new things being revealed about it and being discovered about it all the time. By the time I read The Hero of Ages, all of the characters felt like my friends, so I just had the best time. It just felt like we'd been through so much together, and the ending of this book it broke me. Again, as is the case for many of the books on this list. It was one of those books where I was desperate to finish it, but also I didn't want to because I knew that would mean it was the end, not just the end of the book, but also the end of the trilogy, and I was like, I don't want to let you go, my favourite. So yeah, although I do now have all of Brandon Sanderson's massive collection of works to get to, which I'm very excited about. My next favourite is Girl, Woman, Other by Bernadine and Evaristo. I knew when I read this that it would be on my list. It's just excellent. It's kind of like a collection of interlinking short stories. Each chapter focuses on a different character, and they're all related in some way to each other, and each chapter will just explore this one character's life for a little bit and then you'll move on, which is amazing because it means that you get such breadth of emotion and experience, which is just amazing to read about, and how they all kind of link up but also you know, differ in many ways is fascinating. But it is also really heartbreaking because I just wanted to carry on reading about all of them. I could have read a full-length novel about every single one of these characters. I want them. I wanted more of them all the time. I just felt like I knew them so well. Again, this is going to become a theme. I love the way Bernadine Evaristo writes her characters. They just feel real. It feels like they're out there living and breathing. And also I love her writing style and how she perfectly captures feelings it's beautiful, but it's also really simple at the same time, which is like my favourite writing style. I also read Mr. Loverman by Bernadine Evaristo this year, and it, again, like the writing in that was impeccable. I'm so excited to read the rest of her backlist. I'm not sure which one I'm going to go to next because I don't actually have any of hers at the moment, but eventually I know that I will get around to her. This book is just delightful. It's just wonderful. It's brilliant, and I will be forever salty that it co-won the Booker with The Testaments, which is not a good book. So my next favourite is Small Island by Andrea Levy, and this is another book where the characters just feel like real people. This is about a Jamaican couple, Gilbert and Hortense, who moved to Britain just after the Second World War in kind of with the Windrush generation, and their landlady Queenie, who lets out rooms to them and other black people to make ends meet while her husband is delayed from coming home from the war. I absolutely adored the structure of this book. It's told from the perspective of different characters, which I love anyway, but it's also told in a non-chronological way, so you get to hear about their lives kind of before, during and after the Second World War, which basically means that you just get to know them really well, and as we know, I love that. It has such an amazing ironic humour to it, while also being utterly heartbreaking. It's so sad, and the writing is so beautiful that it seems just effortless. It just tells human stories, like stories of people, but does so much with those stories. It's amazing. It's just amazing. Next up is City of Girls by Elizabeth Gilbert. This is quite different from the others on this list because it's it's YA. I mean, I think people of lots of different age groups would enjoy this, but I think it is kind of marketed as YA. This is the best written young adult novel I have ever read. It's incredible. Most of the books that I read are like dark, creepy, tense kind of thing, but this is just so much fun, and that was a lovely change of pace. I just had the best time. It follows Vivian, who's 19 when she moves to New York to live with her aunt, who owns a theatre, just before, well, I think it's around 1940, so a couple of years before the US joined World War II. It's so full of drama, glamour, backstage shenanigans, and I just got so drawn into all of that kind of world. I've always loved novels about creating theatre and being backstage, like since I was a kid, and this just gave me all of the warm fuzzies. It was wonderful. But as well as being really fun, it's also got so many amazing, fully fleshed out characters who, like, they're such big, real personalities. It's amazing. And also you get to follow Vivian like throughout her life. It's mostly set in the 40s and 50s, but then you get the rest of her life as well, which I absolutely loved because, again, it meant that I felt like I really knew her. It also means that you get to watch so many different kinds of meaningful, complex relationships that really can't be defined, and I think that's what this book is about at its core. It's so well written, it's so funny, and it's just wonderful. I loved it. Next one is one I actually have with me, and that is The Bass Rock by Evie Wyld. I love this book. I read this during the reading rush this year, which I also filmed for my first YouTube videos, and if you've watched those, you'll know that I adored this book. So it took a little while for me to get into it, but then it really got its teeth into me. This follows 3 women and the communities that surround them, and they all live in the shadow of the Bass Rock, which is a rock just off the coast of Scotland. It's very slow. It starts quite unobtrusively, and there's not all that much going on, but it gradually develops into a compelling and absolutely terrifying tale of ghosts and violence against women, and also depression as it's experienced by women, which at least that's how I read it. All the women in this book haunt each other in different ways. They're all kind of connected, and the men haunt them too. Again, the writing is beautiful, and I think I said this in my reading rush blog, but there is genuinely some of the most terrifying writing that I've ever read in this book. It's so tense and so chilling, and the way that the tension builds and spirals is just masterful. It's very angry and threatening, but also incredibly warm and funny in places too, and I think that's an incredible balance to make, which I think all of the books on this list really have that balance of heart but also like darkness, which I just love. Yeah, this is fantastic. Next is another book I finished in the reading rush, and that is Blue Horses by Mary Oliver. This is a collection of poetry, and it's the first collection of poetry by Mary Oliver that I've read. It will not be the last, because this is now one of my all-time favourite poetry collections. I would say the poems in here are mostly about finding joy in a world that is often dark and scary, and how the happiness that exists in small things is so much more precious because of the darkness that surrounds it. There's a lot in here about nature and appreciating nature, but not in a kind of like patronising, go out and hug a tree and your mental illness will be cured kind of way. I read this in one sitting in my favourite park in London on a beautiful sunny day, and it was probably the best reading experience of my entire year. I'm not saying this is my favourite book of the year, I just think that entire experience was just perfect. Like, I can't think of a better way to experience this book. It feels very personal to me. Like, the poetry in here felt like it was filling a hole that I didn't know I had inside of me, that is like just the shape of this book. It felt like it was written for me, and so obviously that means that other people probably won't like it as much, but I love it. I just love it. The next two books I'm going to talk about, I received an advanced ebook copy from NetGalley, and then immediately loved them so much that I pre-ordered a copy once I'd finished them. The first one is Summerwater by Sarah Moss. This is set over the course of one very long, very rainy day in a Scottish campsite, but with log cabins. Each chapter is a different character's perspective, which, as we know, is my shit, and we hear about their kind of disappointing holidays, their sometimes troubled relationships, and also about how they are watching everyone else in the campsite because they have nothing else to do. The style is kind of stream of consciousness, but in a very accessible way, so it feels like you are stuck in the characters' heads, watching them, watching other people, and feeling like there is some kind of conflict coming, because Sarah Moss sort of drops in little creepy bits, little bits of wrong. This is a really short book with so much humour and darkness to it. Because the characters are pretty much all white British middle class with one notable exception, they do sometimes like meld together, but I almost feel like that is deliberate, because this book is about identity and the fear of the unknown that kind of festers in white British middle class communities. I love this. I love Sarah Moss's previous novel, Ghost Wall. What she can do in such a short book is just amazing, and I love it. Read it. Next is another book that broke me into little pieces, and it is The Death of Vivek Oji by Akwaeke Emezi. So at the beginning of this novel, Vivek Oji's body is left outside his parents' house, wrapped in cloth, and no one knows how he got there, or how he died. Over the course of the book, you slowly find out more about Vivek and everyone who surrounds them, and also who they really were. The thing I most admire about this book is, yet again, how much I cared about the characters. I've talked about this book quite a lot, so you may already know that I cried a lot, but I think it is incredible that Akwaeke Emezi makes these characters feel so real, so that even though Vivek's death is literally in the title of the book, when it comes and you find out what happens, it is so utterly heartbreaking, because you know all the situation that surrounds it and everything that has led up to that moment, and what it means to all the people that surround Vivek, and it's just it's a lot. Emezi also brings so many different elements into this book so elegantly, but I think what they do best is explore the blurring of boundaries between gender identities, between different kinds of love, and between life and death. I also read their debut novel Freshwater this year, which is also amazing, and I love their writing. I will read everything that they write from now on. It's just going to happen. I find it really difficult to talk about this book because there's so much in it, and I think that a review can't really do it justice, and I just need you to read it. Sorry. The next book is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. This is the second fantasy novel on this list. However, this is the start of a trilogy, the first book in a trilogy, so I can tell you more about it more than just it's great, read it, although it is great, read it. I also don't want to say that much because part of the joy of experiencing this book is uncovering all that happens, because you start off this book not really knowing anything. It just drops you straight in there, which is quite overwhelming, but like discovering what everything means is so much fun. It's set in a world that feels a little bit like our own, in a kind of maybe not too distant future if we mess everything up astronomically, basically where the earth is always trying to destroy its inhabitants with volcanoes and earthquakes, but there are people who kind of have a power to sort of control the power of the earth. I found the world to be so unique and the characters to be absolutely fascinating. Like, they're so interesting. Again, it's narrated from multiple perspectives. I think the way this is written is what makes it stand out for me, as well as the brilliant world building and the absolutely fascinating diverse cast of characters. I love it. It's so good, and I'm so excited to get to the rest of the trilogy. Lastly is a book I actually read for university. I know, it's a shock to all of us. It's The God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy. Unlike with all the other books on this list, I didn't fall in love with this during my actual reading experience, because I was reading this under time pressure and at a time when I was very distracted by everything. It wasn't like I read it and I instantly fell in love with it, although I did enjoy it a lot more than I did some of my other books that I read for university this year. This book is about some terrible things happening to a family in India, and it essentially jumps around in time, looking at what led up to these events, what happened afterwards. It's kind of similar to Vivek in the sense that at the beginning you know someone is dead but you don't know why or how, and then you spend the rest of the novel sort of putting together a massive family history and exploring the global forces that inform this family history. I said this in my last wrap up when I first talked about this book, but even though I didn't love the reading experience of this, it's one that I know that I will enjoy more upon rereading it. I can already say that that prediction was true, because even though it's only been about a month since I filmed that wrap up, I have been writing an essay about this book. Well, I've written it now, and yeah, reading it and reading articles about it and kind of figuring out more how it works has just been so wonderful and has made me realise that this is just a masterpiece. It is one of the best written books I've ever read. I knew that on the first read, and the amount of stuff that she is doing in here is insane. It's incredible. So I wanted to include it because it's amazing. It will stick with me not just in my memory but as a book that I return to. It already kind of feels stuck to my soul in a way that I can't really describe. That sounds really wanky, but it's true. I guess. Before we finish, I'm just gonna run through a quick load of honourable mentions, because like I said, I read so many amazing books this year. Homegoing by Yaa Gyasi is an amazing family saga following the subsequent generations of two sisters from Ghana, one of whom is sold into slavery and the other one marries a slave trader. The Doll Factory by Elizabeth Macneal is an amazing story. It's an incredibly tense novel about art and obsession set in 1850. Kindred by Octavia Butler is like classic brilliant sci-fi about a black woman in the 70s who is transported without warning back into a kind of like slavery era US. Freshwater, like I mentioned earlier, is Akwaeke Emezi's debut book. It is unique and incredible and unlike anything I've ever read. It's impossible to pin down. Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata is a dark, disturbing, but also really, darkly funny look at the expectations for women in Japan. And then I reread two favourites, which are obviously favourites, so The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller and The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Yeah, I love those too. So that is that. My top 10 plus a couple of honourable mentions of 2020. Yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this, and I really hope that you pick up some of these books because they're amazing. Please let me know if you do, or if you've read them already and also love them as much as I do, or if you hate them and you want to, tell me why I'm wrong. That's fine too. We can have a fun little fight in the comments. Yeah, anyway, I hope you enjoyed this and I will see you soon.